So, where does Shamrock, the brother of Shanks, actually stand in the world of One Piece? Will he remain the villain until the very bitter end, or will something about him change as the story unfolds? Today, friends, we're taking a closer look at everything surrounding him, and as always, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Also, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like so you stay up to date on all things One Piece. And from me, enjoy the video. The thing with Shamrock is, regardless of whether it stays this way until the end or not, he's essentially portrayed as the so-called evil equivalent of Shanks within the world government. Basically a distorted version of him, someone who looks similar, is undoubtedly just as strong, probably just as intelligent, but has positioned himself on the opposite side and operates from a completely different moral compass. But this fact isn't just particularly interesting. When you look at it from every angle, it's actually a deeply sad affair. Because Shanks and Shamrock are essentially two entities within the One Piece story that are theoretically interchangeable, completely so, even in terms of personality. They're twins. They had an identical start in life, and up to a certain point, virtually everything about them was the same. Everything changed from the moment they were separated and raised by two different people. Shamrock by his biological father Garling, and Shanks by Roger. But if both children had been swapped before that point, it would have been reflected equally in their personalities. What I mean is, if Shanks had been in Shamrock's place and lived that life, he would have developed the exact same personality Shamrock has now. And if Shamrock had been in Shanks' place, he would now be Luffy's mentor figure and one of the four emperors. Everything identical, just under different names. What I'm actually getting at is that in One Piece, good and evil don't necessarily come 100% from a person's own choices, but are often shaped by the environment they were born into or that ultimately molded them. That's why there are some especially clear examples in One Piece, like Katakuri, who clearly isn't evil at heart, but was repeatedly pushed toward doing evil things. And even among the Straw Hats, it's no different. Nico Robin was a cold-blooded assassin. You could say she strayed from her path at some point, and Frankie was a serious thug. Not at all the person we know him as today. So yes, it's often just a chain of events, a series of circumstances that shapes a person into who they ultimately become. But for some people, it's far more severe than for others, including, as mentioned, many of the Holy Knights, like Shamrock. Starting with the general concept of the Celestial Dragons, though, it's especially difficult to ever break free from that system, because you're practically forced to live there forever, as a bad person. Either you get cast out, you get killed, or if you choose to live below, you end up being destroyed down there one way or another. For Donkey Sot Haming, Doflamingo's father, and his entire family, that was practically guaranteed ruin. Doflamingo was the only one who made it out relatively okay. Well, his brother too, but he was ultimately killed by Doflamingo. And staying on Mary Giu's isn't much better either, because a distant relative of Doflamingo's Don Quixote Mjosgard also went through something like hell on earth there, with his actions severely punished because he stood up against the Celestial Dragons. So yes, you're inevitably born into systems you can't escape from, and it doesn't matter at all whether you're directly under brainwashing, like Princess Shuri, also known as Gunko, or whether it played out in another way like with Shamrock. The Holy Knights we've recently gotten to know on Elbaf feel like not just a colorful bunch, but a particularly broken one. First we have Shamrock, who stands out somewhat, though we'll come back to him later. Then there's Samas, who has a metallic heart and generally has severe complexes around feelings of love. Then there's Killingham, who looks like a half-fishman, very likely is one, and has therefore developed something like a form of self-directed racism. These complexes about his own existence as a fishman, which is why he goes after Jinbei so aggressively. And last but not least, Princess Shuri, who was directly brainwashed and now operates under the name Gunko. But what personally makes Shamrock stand out for me above all is the fact that he is genuinely intelligent, on a similar level to Shanks. And from that intelligence, he's probably capable of real self-reflection and of evaluating situations entirely on his own terms. So, to think somewhat outside the box and push back against certain aspects of the world government in the current state of things, at least in my opinion, he's the only Holy Knight without any deep traumatic complex, unlike Samas or Killingham. And above all, I can quite easily imagine that Shanks' time on Mary Giu's wasn't only used to function as some kind of informant for the pirate world, but also to forge a particularly strong connection with his brother. I'm not saying Shanks revealed his entire plan or tried to pull Shamrock over to the other side, but that certain conversations did take place between them, including on a moral level, questioning the whole world as it runs, especially Mary Giu's with its Celestial Dragon and Holy Knight system. That's something I absolutely believe Shanks is capable of. It's not essential for the world that Shamrock joins the good side, but it probably is essential for Shanks personally, because that realization which I fully believe Shanks is capable of, that both of their lives are theoretically interchangeable, that he could have been standing in Shamrock's shoes is certainly not an easy thing to swallow. For Shanks, that time up on Mary Geoise was probably an extremely unsettling reality to begin with. He was received with open arms by someone who is actually not a kind person at all. When Garling welcomed Shanks, we've probably never seen him act as warmly. He wasn't cold, quite the opposite. He practically offered Shanks an almost warm embrace and laid the world at his feet. That doesn't exactly make Garling Father of the Year, but it shows more than clearly enough that his moral foundations are complete garbage. Probably on a level where, in quotes, there's no fixing him anymore. But yes, I think with Shamrock, the train hasn't completely left the station yet, and Shanks would definitely have been able to sense that window of opportunity. For me, it would therefore be an especially powerful story statement if the twins were able to fight side by side to bring their father to justice. And maybe the death or whatever awaits Garling at the end of the story would be exactly the moment that opens Shamrock's eyes too. Because yes, I can quite easily imagine that Garling went through something similar to what Shanks and Shamrock did, that his mother was effectively taken from him, and so on, and also that he was manipulated by the world government into becoming the man he is today. But he simply didn't make the break, and I'm pretty sure he won't manage it anytime soon either. The current generation of Holy Knights, on the other hand, is more broken than ever. They don't just carry problems that lie dormant deep within them, they carry ones so large they're visible right on the surface. That doesn't make their actions any better, nor does it really justify them either, and everything they've done in the story so far doesn't become any easier to stomach because of it. But you can understand them, and they would probably benefit from a turning point more than any other Holy Knight, a world where they're no longer destroyed by their own complexes and can simply exist as who they truly want to be. So no one but Shamrock, in my view, is the right person to somehow carry that message to all the Holy Knights, and especially to convince those with the deepest wounds to switch sides, fight for the good, and stand up against the world government.